Hey guys, welcome to another video in this series about building a chat app in Flutter the right way. And in this video, we'll be looking at setting up our local database, having our database running on our device, and also getting messages from our server in real time. So we'll be updating or adding messages from our RethinkDB and see them being displayed in real time in our messages interface. So let us get right into it. And remember guys, if this is your first time here and you like what you see, you like the way that we approach development as we strive to be better Flutter developers, please consider subscribing, liking the video, sharing, and leaving a comment. So let's get right into it. And the first thing I want to do is for our database, I want to create a factory that will create those tables on our device, that will set up the database itself and create those tables. So inside of our data folder, I'll go ahead and create a folder called factories, and then I'll create a file called db factory. And I already have the factory set up, the factory method class rather. So I'm just going to copy and paste that here and describe what is happening instead of using the time to create this factory. So here I have gone ahead and create our database factory class. And as we can see here, what is happening is I am creating a database instance with this create database method. And so we have the path to the database, which we use this get path method, which is already a part of the SQLite library. And then we'll use this join method to join the database path to the name of our database. And this join method is only available in the path package. So what we want to do is to go ahead inside of our pubspec YAML file, and we need to get that path package up. So we'll go ahead and we'll download that path package. So now the package is downloaded and ready. Now we'll have access to this join method so that we'll join the path to the database along with the name of our database. Then after we've done that, what we need to do is to get an instance of the SQLite database by calling this method open database, where we pass the path and the version. And then on the onCreate method, we'll call this method populate database, which will create our database tables. And so we have the two methods here to create our chat table and to create our messages table. And as you can see, what we have here is to execute a query that creates the chat table. So we have the create table chats, and we have our ID as the primary key, and we have our created at timestamp, which we use the current timestamp method. This is a method on SQLite. So this will automatically adds the time that the record was inserted into this table. And we have our catch, our error, and our completion method that shows whether the chat is created or there was an error creating that table. Similarly, for our create messages table, we have our create table messages and we have all the necessary fields. We have our chat ID, and all these should not be null. So we have our chat ID, then we have the ID of the message, then we have the sender and receiver. And as you can see, we have changed this in the table from the word from and to, because those are keywords inside of our database. So we cannot use from. So I change it to sender receiver, and therefore we'll need to modify our messages class to change those fields also, which we'll do in a second. But we have our sender, receiver, the contents, the receipt. We have our received at. Again, instead of using the word timestamp, since timestamp is a key, built-in keyword there, or built-in method. So we have received at, and we have the created at, which takes the current timestamp again by default when the message is inserted. So we have our database factory set up here. So what we want to do is go ahead and make the modifications to our local messages, a local message class, to have sender and receiver instead of from and to. So we'll find our local message class here, and as you can see, we have from and to here. So inside here, what we're gonna do is to, inside of our toJSON method, we have sender, then we'll say that would be from, then we'll have receiver, that will be to, and we'll go ahead and add our contents, and our received at. So we'll remove this message.json from here, and we will add our received at here, and that will be the timestamp from the message. And so now here in our from map method, we'll have, instead of from, we'll have sender, instead of to, we'll have receiver, and instead of timestamps, we will have received at. So there we have modified our local message so that we do not have conflicts when creating those database tables with the actual keywords that are listed there. So now inside of our composition root, we can go ahead and create our database. So here I'm just gonna say db, and I'll make this static we'll say go ahead await our local database factory dot create database. So now we have access to an instance of our database. So now I also want to set up my message service that will be used to fetch messages in real time as they come in. So now I'm gonna say I message service. And for now, I'm just going to leave out the encryption. We will have to get our encryption service also, but I'm just gonna make that optional for now. So since I am making the encryption optional for now, I will need to go ahead and modify my send method here. So I will only encrypt the information if the encryption is not null. So I'll go ahead and say if encryption, if that's not null, then I'll encrypt the data here. And the same thing with decrypting the message here. Encryption is not null, then go ahead and decrypt. So now we have that modification. Now we can create our message service without the encryption needed. So now we can create our SQF-like data source. And our data source will be our SQF data source, and we'll pass in the DB there. Now for our home UI, we will go ahead and add another block provider, and this block provider will have our message block so that we can receive messages in real time. So let's go ahead, message block. Let's import that. That's equal to message block, and we'll pass in our message service right there. So now we'll pass our message block here. Next, we'll create a qubit that handles the loading of the messages from the local database, and also whenever a message is received from a user, then that qubit is responsible for updating the UI. So let's go here to our states management. I'll go inside of home, and I'll create a chats qubit. This will extend qubit as usual, and it will be a list of chat. Put our qubit there. For the initial state, we will pass in null. And for its dependencies, we will use our chat's view model. Then we'll create a method, future void, that represents our chats. So chats, and this method will get a list of chats from the database using the view model. Then we'll update the UI with that list of chats. So now we have our chat qubit. Can go back to our composition root and we can say chats view model, and I'm basically setting up all our dependencies before we start modifying the UI. So we have our chats view model. Now we can set up our chats qubit, which is chats qubit. Then we'll also add that to our multi-block provider. So another block provider here. And we'll go ahead and pass our chats qubit. So now we have the dependencies for our home UI. So now to our home, inside of our init state, I want to get a list of chats from the DB. So I'm just going to use the context. I'm going to read, and this way I can fetch my chats qubit and call the chats method. Also, I want to go ahead and subscribe to receive messages. So again, context read. This time I want my message block, and I'm gonna add an event, and this event will be a message event, and it will be an unsubscribe event. And as you can see, the unsubscribe event takes a user, which is the user that is currently logged or currently using the application. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to hard code a user that's already in the database. So I'm just going to say final user equal to user, and I'm going to use the from. Use the from JSON method and pass in a JSON object here. So I'll fetch the JSON object from my database so that I can get the record. But make sure that you're using the record of a user that is in your database. So this is the user from my database that I have created. And the most important thing here is the user ID here. So we have and active true. So as you can see, I have nothing for the photo URL, and I just use datetime.now for the last scene. So now we subscribe to receive messages for this user. I'm also, for my home state here, I'm also gonna use the keep alive mixin so that when I transition between the tabs aren't refreshed every time. So I'm just going to use the automatic keep alive mixin here, and that will implement a method, the keep alive method here, which we simply go ahead and return true. So now to my chats widget, this is now where we will build our chats based on what's in the database and what we are receiving from users or different senders. So here I'll create a variable chats, which is a list. This will hold the list of chats. Then I want to override my init state, and here I want to listen to the stream to receive those new messages for each chat. So I'm gonna create a method called new message received. And in this method, I'm gonna get my chats qubit using the context read, and I want my chats qubit. And the reason I have access to all these using the context is because I'm using the multi-block provider as the parent widget. So all these different blocks and qubits are available to the different children or the different children of that parent. And this read method is from the package, from the Flutter block package. So we will read that in, then I'm gonna read in my message block, and what I'm gonna do is access the stream and listen to that stream for the different states that are passed through. So I'm gonna say if the state is a message received success state, then what I want to do is to say use my chats qubit. This is sync. Use my chats qubit to access the view model, and then call the received message method on that view model, and I'll pass in the state, the message that we have received there from the state object. And the reason why I use a view model is because there are methods in it that transform the message from one state to another. which wouldn't be appropriate to do anywhere inside of the UI itself. And that's the purpose of a view model, to transform the input into the expected output for the UI. So now I'll send that into the view model. The view model will transform that, which what it basically does is that it will create a new chat, or it will add that message to an existing chat. So now I can say chats qubit, and I can call that chats method now to retrieve the list of chats and update the UI. So now inside my build method, I am going to extract this into a new method, and I'll call this method build list view. Then I'll say return a block builder here, and this block builder will be type chats qubit, and will return a list of chat. And for our builder, we will update the chats variable with that list of chats, and then we will say return build list view. So now inside of our list view, we'll go ahead and say that the item count should be chats, the length of the chats. And then inside our chat item, we want to pass in a chat. And in this case, it will be the index. So here we'll say chat, and now we can go ahead and set the contents of the list view based on the chat. So chat, most recent message, contents. So if I go ahead and save that, there is nothing there since we do not have a chat inside of our local database. If I refresh that again, creating tables chat, creating tables messages, and now we have some problems here. So as you can see, it says there are no columns created at. So let's just go ahead and check that out. So we'll need to open our SQF-like data source. And when it finds all chats, it says there are no column created at. So as you can see here, the error is due to spelling. So we have last test here instead of latest. So let us fix that. Latest. So we have latest messages. Also, I have added this order by clause here so that the latest messages always comes up on top. Also, in this method, I want to remove our try int here, since this first where is already returning an integer. So I want to remove all of that. And that's it. So we go ahead and save. And if I should refresh, then it should work. So now it's not throwing the error, but we do not have any records in our database at the moment. So back to our chats widget here. We're going to update our chats, going to build our list view, and we are going to set our subtitle to the most recent message, and our text here, it should be chat, because this represents the number of unread messages. Unread to string. Also, I want to make this a conditional statement. So I'm going to say if the chat unread message, if it is greater than 0, then we show this container. Otherwise, show an empty container here. So now what we are going to try is to try and send a message from the server and see if that message will arrive here. But we'll have to send that message to the user that we have hard-coded here. So inside of our home, this user we have hard-coded here, we'll have to send a message to that user. So let us bring up our rethink database here. And inside my database, I have 3 users. This is the user that is currently signed in, and these are the 2 other active users to which I can send messages. So if I should go to my Data Explorer, where I have a couple queries already set up, as you can see, I can send a message from and I need to get the ID to. So this is the person that it's coming to, which is me. I'll copy that, paste that here, which is, I think, is the same ID. And that message is coming from this person. So let's go ahead and run this query and see what will happen. We run the query, but now we are having an issue with date time. And I think the issue is that we cannot write date time to the SQLite database. I think we have to convert that to string. So inside of our message to map here, let's go inside of our message, local message, where we have date time here. We'll have to convert that to string. And when we are receiving that datetime here, we'll have to parse it from string. Also, inside of our SQLite for our chats, whenever we find all chats here, where we're passing the row here instead of passing the row, because if I pass the row like this, it's gonna get instead of setting the chat ID, it's gonna get the message ID, because inside of our local message, not the local message, but inside of our chat, if I can find my chat model here, as you can see, the from map, it simply maps the ID from the JSON. So what I'll go ahead and do is just create a new map here, and that ID will be row chat ID. Let me refresh to see if anything was written to the database, even though there was an exception. And nothing was written. So let's try again. But based on the exception, we can see that the message came from the server to the application. So let us run that again. Now we have a different error. Let's find where that error is coming from. So we have a bad state, no element coming here. So what's causing, or what caused that issue, is that a chat was created in the DB, but there were no messages associated with that chat. And so when it reaches here, it was throwing that error. So what I've done is to, inside our composition root, as the application boots, just to run these two delete queries to delete everything from chats and messages. So we can restart, and that will clear the database for us. So now if we should try again, run this, remove this breakpoint, then we'll see our chat show up here, say, hey, how are you? And if we should go ahead again and type another message, send this message again, then as you can see, the chat changed to the most recent message, which is "that's nice." So now we know that we are receiving messages in real time from this server. So now we can go ahead and modify our UI to the other information that we receive from the chat. So for the name, or the message rather, I want the font. So font weight, I want it to be bold if the message is not red. So again, if they are unread messages here, then I want the font weight to be bold. Otherwise, I want the font weight to be normal. So that should bold to get bold. Next, I want the time when that is retrieved, and I want to format it. And in order to format it properly, I am going to go to my pubspec YAML file, and I'm going to install this package intl. So now we have that there. Let's save that. And here what I'm going to do is use a date format method from that intl class. And you can specify the format here. So the format I want is the hour, the minute, and whether it's the A representing whether it's AM or PM. Then format, and what I want to format is the most recent message timestamp. Let's go ahead and import that from the intl package. If I save that, then it should show a time, which is my local time, which is 10:30 p.m. Now, the next thing is to get the name of the user and also the URL to the profile image. So what I'll do is to, inside my chat model, I'm just going to go ahead and add a user here. And this will be the from, the user where I'm having this chat, the user whom I'm having this chat with. So then inside of my chats view model, what I want to do is whenever I fetch those chats from the database, then I want to also fetch the user to know if that user is online, to fetch the username and the profile image. So I'm gonna say final chats. Then what I want to do is to loop through each chat and to fetch the user associated with the chat. So I'm gonna use a for each here, but it's gonna be a future, the for each from the future, since the method I'll be calling is an async method. So for each, and here I'm working on chats. Single element is chat. this is gonna be async here. And now what I want to say is final user, and I'm gonna have to inject the user service here. So I user service, inject that here. Then I'll say the user will be the user service, and I'll have to create a new method on that user service called fetch that will accept the user ID and fetch that user. And then my chat from will be equal to that user. Then I'll just return those chats. So I will have to go to my user service. So let me find that user service. First, to the contract, I'll need to add that method future void fetch string ID then I'll need to find my user service IMPL, create that over that method, and we'll go ahead and fetch the user here. And that's pretty simple. We'll go ahead, final user is equal to await our table, users table, go ahead and get by that ID, and then run the connection. And now I can simply say return and return user from JSON and pass in that user. And that's a simple method to fetch the user. So back to our chats model here. Or chats view model. It should return a user, not void. Contract user. User. So now back to our chats view model that is working. Now inside of our composition root, we will need to pass in that user service here. So user service. Go ahead and save that. Now back to our chats, we can now have the username. So we can say chats chat from username. And then for profile image, we can say chat from photo URL, and whether they are online or not, chat from active. Go ahead and save that. That should cause problem. We need to start our server, our photo server. So if I go to my terminal, cd inst server, then node app.js. Now my server is running. Can refresh this. Since I have these here deleting the messages, so each time I refresh it would delete the chat from the local DB. That's why though that chat is gone. But let's just go back to our server here and send another chat. There is our chat, there is the user, and fetching the URL, the photo from our image server. We can also send another chat. So let's go ahead, find another user. So here's another user, Macy. Let's copy that user ID. Back to our Data Explorer. Change the from to that user. And we can say hi. And if we send this message, then another chat should show up. There we have another chat from Macy saying hi. And we can always send more messages. Hello. So this should now be the latest message from Macy. So hi should change to hello. And there we have it, hello. So we are receiving messages from our server, and that is great. So we have connected to the server. We are receiving messages from the server. And so in the next video, we'll be looking at receiving other events from the server, like the typing events, those kind of typing notifications. And then we'll look at creating the chat UI where we'll begin to type our actual messages. So thank you guys for tuning in, for watching this video. I hope it has been informative, and see you in the next video. Thank you.